It's another hazy shade of winter here in July at Site B. I am the OGGM, trying to get a little exercise in before the next round of clouds shows up, and it's time for part 2 of how the OGGM would book the Radiant Citadel, how I would have written the Radiant Citadel. Let us just reframe again how fucking simple the premise of Radiant Citadel is. The blueprint has literally been done. The amount of work Wizards of the Coast would have had to do is negligible, and yet somehow it is a catastrophic disaster from almost every point of view. Yes, there are a few reviewers who are saying it's great because it's multicultural and it's taking D&D in a new way, but also, I mean, come on, you guys got that copy for free, so you're sort of been bribed to give a good review. I have yet to hear anything positive about it. What I am hearing is just day after day, moment after moment, something else about it that is just sort of upsetting. We have already found out that several of the writers of the adventures in Radiant Citadel never played D&D. Had no idea what they were doing. But fine, they were hired to write episodes of a series. So, you know, somebody else could have come in and ghost writ the D&D appropriate stuff to turn the story of, you know, the ghost woman of the Winnebago swamps into a D&D scenario. That's fine. I do not hold it against the writers that they were not aware of how the creation they were writing for worked, because that's somebody else's job, okay? Their job was to write a story. They wrote a story, they presented the story to Wizards of the Coast, they made their money, whatever. But it appears that several of the adventures don't contain any stats for the NPCs encountered. There's no stats for the shield maidens. There's no stats for the NPCs. There's no stats for the miners and counters. Only some of the boss monsters at the end have stat blocks, and some of the other boss monsters don't have stat blocks because they're supposed to be resolved without any form of conflict, because they're not really bad guys. They're just tragic, misunderstood mythological characters. Now that's just lazy. That's just lazy on the parts of Wizards of the Coast. It takes half a second to add a stat block for a shield maiden, or for Steve the blacksmith, or for anything that the player characters might want to interact with. If there's any dice rolling involved, there needs to be a stat block, okay? It's one line, 2 lines of text at most. All that, you know, overpriced quality artwork on the quality photo paper, that's money that could have been spent to paying, I don't know, anybody to put in stat blocks, okay? So here's how I would book Radiant Citadel Part 2. Part 1, we've already established that we did not build it, we found it. How was it found? Probably the way, you know, most things are found, by accident. Probably a group of adventurers. Let's steal blatantly from Stargate. They were, you know, a group of adventurers, or a group of archaeologists, or a group of whatever, spelljammers, took a left at Albuquerque, discover this gateway, discover this huge, abandoned, multi-dimensional Nexus city. Okay, so now, part 2, the Citadel sits at the epicenter of a dimensional Nexus. How was this Nexus created? Is it natural? Is it artificial? Was it built on purpose? Was it an accident? That's a question that needs to be answered. How do these gates work? We discover, part 2, that there are these gates, these cracks, that these stargates, you know, that allow you to travel to other parts of the galaxy, other parts of the universe, perhaps either other multiverses. Is that natural, or is that artificial? Are they stargates like from Stargate? Is it a stationary controlled wormhole like from DS9? Is it some just alien technology that nobody understands? We just use it like Babylon 5 in The Expanse. You know, But we have this dimensional Nexus city. We have these gates that allow trade and commerce and exploration to multiple ends of the universe and multiple ends of the multiverse. Where are these gates and who controls them? So part 2, we need to understand, here's the city. It's one of a kind as far as we know. It is the center of this dimensional nexus. How is this dimensional nexus created? We don't know. Accident, on purpose, naturally evolved, whatever. But that's something that needs to be hanging out there for a future thing. The dimensional nexus allows people who are in the know to use it to travel to other places. How does that work? We don't know. Probably should know. Somebody should know, or at least somebody should be pretending to know. Now, if there is a power source that is limited access, somebody is going to, through hook or by crook, seek to control those. So if we have a finite number of these stargates, if we have a finite number of these stationary wormholes, somebody by now has found a way to control them, and somebody by now is at least perpetuating the myth that they're the only ones that can control it. And maybe it's true, or maybe nobody knows how it works. Maybe they just, 9 out of 10 times the gate does what it's supposed to, but there's always that 10th time where something crazy happens. Maybe they just have the military and political might to hold on to the gate, but they don't really know how it works. They don't want anybody to know that they don't know how it works. But you definitely don't want the player characters to ever know, at least at the beginning, that control of the gates is not as guaranteed as the individuals who are controlling it lead on, that there are only a finite number of gates. Maybe there are gates that break down, maybe the gates are malfunctioning, maybe there are gates that go to places that are so utterly dangerous they need to just be never touch those. And then maybe the players find one that nobody knows about. This is the idea I like, because this makes the player characters the protagonists of our show. This makes them Sam from Quantum Leap. They find something that nobody else has. Perhaps a master gate, or perhaps a girl with the golden watch key that allows them to control the other gates or use the other gates. Perhaps they discover that the factions that have access to the gates are lying. Maybe a gate that's supposedly active has died and one of the factions doesn't want anybody to know. And once you establish center dimensional nexus, nobody knows how that works. Gates, very few people control them. Those few people can control who gets to use the gates. Those few people perpetuate the mythology of the gates, but nobody actually knows how the gates work, if the gates work at all, how reliable the gates are, because it's a limited thing that we have limited access to, that only a few individuals can hold on to. And then you introduce the chaotic aspect that is player characters, and you give them the hook for part 2 to find that the Radiant Citadel is not as utopian as somebody would like us to believe, that these organizations and factions aren't all powerful, that there's stuff going on with the gates that are mysterious. So that's part 2. That's how I'd roll it. Basically, Deep Space Nine. Okay? Station, guarding, stable wormhole, but no matter how the crew of DS9 invests energy in trying to understand the stable wormhole, no one ever 100% does. There's always a sense of mystery, alien, whatever you want to call it, a sense of risk, the sense that whoever is talking, these people don't actually know as much about the thing as they say they do, whatever. So that's part 2. Part 3, we get into these mysterious factions and we get into the illusion of this utopia. because that apparently, I think, is something that should be explored in Radiant Citadel, but isn't. In closing, let's just say Radiant Citadel is the gift that's going to keep on giving for a while, and I am still utterly flabbergasted how Wizards of the Coast could have taken something so simple and turned it into something that apparently is a mess. Good afternoon. I'm the OG GM with my continuing breakdown of everything that's going on with Radiant Citadel until something else newsworthy comes out. Tomorrow we should have all the news from VentureCon, Comic-Con. I guess Founders and Legends is happening this weekend. We'll talk about that one. Oh, I'm sure we'll talk about that one. And the other usual grab bag news. Until then, if you appreciate this content, let me know. If there's anything you'd like to change, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Support me. It doesn't take any energy on your part, and it helps me a lot to achieve that 1,000 sub goal. Until next time, see ya.